Indiana has the edge over Oregon in their upcoming matchup, but it's just not really the way anybody wanted to see Indiana get the edge. Welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR. A lot to get into with this episode. We got Oregon, Indiana, an injury, a transfer portal that's going to impact that game. We have shocking portal exits for teams. And we have Paul Finebaum finally saying it correct to everybody. We appreciate you being here. We're presented to you by FanDuel. Thank you so much for being a part of the Big Ten Huddle, just by listening at the very least. If you would, please do give us a 5-star rating or review if you're on podcasts. If you're on YouTube, a like certainly helps. And just a comment down below letting us know you listen, letting us know something you agreed with, maybe something you disagreed with, please in a respectful way. That always is helpful as well. But definitely appreciate everybody being here. And we do ask that you would please like, subscribe, do all that good stuff as well. So let's get into it. Oregon and Indiana are facing off on Friday night. Indiana is favored in this game by 3.5 over Oregon. And Indiana obviously has the edge. On FanDuel, they're favored by 3.5. I don't know where they are anywhere else. I'm only looking at FanDuel here. But if you look at this game, Indiana obviously has the edge because they went into Autzen and beat Oregon by 10 points. Now, some people could make some arguments that Indiana actually could have won that game by more, and you could also have made the argument that if it wasn't for a mistake or two by Oregon, Oregon would have been much closer in that game and possibly even came out with the win in that one. Obviously, those are just what ifs, and nobody actually wins or loses in what ifs. It's just a fun game to play, I guess. And there is some area for analysis in those, but the analysis that we need to get into here is the news that Jordan Davison is going to be out the rest of the season after suffering a collarbone injury. It sounded like it happened in the first quarter of the Texas Tech game. So I know there was some consternation of, did it happen on that last run when he got into the end zone against Texas Tech? No, 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 no. Sounds like this happened in the first quarter against Texas Tech, and he just played the entire game through it. Now, collarbone injuries, if you've ever broken your collarbone, injured your collarbone at all, it's not exactly the most comfortable thing in the world. So major props to Jordan Davison that he, maybe props, I don't know, just, the heart and the desire to go out there for his team to continue to play through this injury. I don't ever want to advocate for a player to play through their injury because I do think that, football is not something you always get to play throughout your entire life. And if you really mess yourself up injury wise, you can significantly cut down that time of play you have in your life. But it does show how much he truly does care about his team, how much he was willing to go through the pain and be able to contribute for his team to get the win against Texas Tech. Excellent stuff. Excellent attitude, I guess we should say, by Jordan Davison. But he's not going to be the only running back that is out. You are also going to see Jayden Lamar not be playing in this game, and Dalton Riggs as well. But Jayden Lamar, the bigger storyline here, I guess you could say, he's not going to be playing in this game either because Jayden Lamar has actually entered into the transfer portal. Now, this is not great news for Oregon because this puts Oregon with only 3 running backs in this game. Now, 2 of them very good running backs, but this Oregon system has utilized 4 running backs all season long. They went down to 3 for a little bit with Deer Hill when he had his injury and stuff. So I shouldn't say all season long, but really, for a good amount of the season, they've been utilizing 3 running backs, and it's been very effective for them. I talked about it on this show multiple times about how good this was for Oregon. It allows them to play, 21 personnel, 12 personnel, obviously, with their 2 tight ends as well, but it allows them to play so much more 12 personnel to be able to have their running backs back there. I'm sorry, I was just thinking, I said 12 personnel, 21 personnel, because it allows them to have their running backs back there. And then also with a deeper running back room that you can go 4 deep. Obviously, with Deer Hill's injury, you couldn't go 4 deep all season long. But you did see Jay Harris out there a little bit and him working in with the offense some. But really, 3 running backs for the majority of the year, for them to be able to do 21 personnel, have 2 backs in the backfield, it's been very beneficial for them. And even in that game against Indiana, and what was that, week 5, week 6, I think it was, Jordan Davis was the one who had the most success. And really, he's been kind of resigned to the power back role for times this season. But then also, when he has the hot hand against the team and he's the one that's running the best, I mean, that's another aspect of this Oregon offense, is will Stein will go to whichever running back is having the most success, and you just kind of ride that guy, keep going with them. Well, with Lamar, Jayden Lamar, and obviously Mekhi Hughes as well, he's been in the portal for a while. With them in the portal, this makes it much more difficult for the program this week. The Ducks will have to, rely on three available running backs and Noah Whittington, De'Aaron Hill Jr., and Jay Harris. Now, Jay Harris has said he intends to enter into the transfer portal, but he has not actually entered into it yet, it sounds like. So that is why he is able to play in this one. You can be in the portal and still play with your team, but typically it's just a Dan Lanning, Oregon type of thing that you're not going to that you're not going to be in the portal and still playing with your team. Hill nearly doubled his snaps after the Indiana game, and this could be a good sign for Oregon. Up to the Indiana game, he was averaging about 5 snaps per game. In the games after Indiana, he was averaging nearly double that. De'Aaron Hill went De'Aaron Hill went from 5 snaps per game against a competition going up to that Indiana game to 9 snaps per game following that Indiana game, and that's when he had 3 of his 5 touchdowns on the season, and he was getting carries not every single time he was in there, but there were also times when he was in there when he wasn't getting carries as well. All of this started when Lamar started having his injury issues and things started to play into stuff there. So we went from an absolutely stacked running back room for Oregon, where they just had a ton of depth and a ton of different guys that can come in and play, to now this running back room for Oregon being pretty scarce, and this doesn't exactly line up with the type of offense that Oregon wants to run. Oregon does have 2 of their top 3 highest graded running backs on the season. Hill and Whittington are 2 of their top 3. Jordan Davison, though, was the highest graded running back on PFF offensively or rushing. It was either offensively or rushing wise, one of the two. A lot of those grades are the same, though. So we'll see what this looks like with, maybe some less 21 personnel. I think in this one, you'll start seeing some more 12 personnel, both tight ends in there. Could we see some more tight ends in the backfield possibly to kind of help out with that kind of stuff? Whatever Will Stein is going to do, it is going to be very interesting. And it will be interesting to see how Indiana adjusts as well, because this will most certainly change the offense. I can't imagine that Will Stein's going to go out there and have, his running backs playing 30, 40 snaps a game with running, the two running back out there type of look. So on the bright side for Oregon, they have adjusted all season long to injuries. They've had injuries on the offensive line. They've had injuries at the wide receiver position. They've had injuries on the defensive side of the ball as well. This Oregon team has found a way to adjust every single time they have injuries. And like I said as well, this could provide Oregon with some different looks that maybe Indiana is not prepared for. The only issue with this is that Will Stein is also the head coach at Kentucky right now. He's very busy with the transfer portal. Obviously, Kentucky just got the flip of Kenny Minchey from Nebraska to come on over to Kentucky there. And so how much time does Will Stein really have to give to this and give to his team to be able to do this kind of stuff? We'll see. To me, that's my biggest concern, because it seems like these teams that don't have coordinators doing anything else, Miami, Indiana, they have really benefited from it. But then at the same time, we just saw Ole Miss take down, Georgia, and half of their offensive staff, or like all of their offensive staff almost, was also doing double time at LSU and everything. So we'll see what happens here. It's going to be very interesting. If you would, please do like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments, who do you have in this game? Do you have Indiana to cover? Do you have Oregon to cover? Do you have a score prediction picked out? Would love to hear what everybody has in this one. I do think that this Jordan Davison and Jayden Lamar is going to impact things, but I don't think this will impact the spread. Unless big money comes in on one side or the other, I think the spread is probably going to stay at about 3.5. It was at 4.5 at one point. Might be there at 4.5 as well. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, subscribe, and give us a 5-star rating on the podcast as well. Gonna take a quick break. Be right back. shocking transfer portal exits from Big Ten teams. We got four of, well, we have five, but we're gonna put the Damon Williams one in his own video as well if I have enough time to talk about it. So we'll see. Watch this one, and if there's five in here, you'll get five. If there's four, then know that there's another Damon Williams video that you can go check out there. So four Big Ten players that it really was kind of crazy to fans. Now some of these, maybe it wasn't as crazy, but some of these were not things that fans were expecting. I do want to say that this does suck for these fans. I take no joy in talking about this, but it is news we need to talk about, and I do think people find it interesting talking about, what is the team going to do to replace them? Where might the player go? That kind of stuff. And so we're going to talk about it, but this isn't something that I enjoy. Quite honestly, stuff like this is one of the reasons why I've been turned off of college basketball a little bit more recently with the NBA players coming back and pro players and stuff like that. Still watch basketball, I still enjoy it, but there is kind of some stuff there that makes me not enjoy it as much. And if this kind of stuff continues to happen, it's just going to continue to be really, really bad for the sport. So these are shocking, but I am by no means saying these are devastating to a certain team or anything like that, because I think all of these teams can come through in these situations. But I also don't think that every single team, is in the best situation here. It's just surprising, but not necessarily devastating. I'll let you be the one making the decision. You make the decision in the comment section for me if it is devastating or just shocking for your team. Give me your thoughts on these guys. So the first one here is obviously Koen Entringer. I believe I'm saying that correctly. I apologize if I'm not. Koen Entringer, he is from Ann Arbor, Walled Lake Western High School in Ann Arbor, Michigan. He played safety. He was a junior last year for Iowa. Entringer was a team captain, 73 tackles, 4 pass deflections, 1 forced fumble, and he graded out as the 26th best safety on PFF in the Big Ten and 2025. Now, there's a lot of speculation on why Entringer, was wanting to leave Iowa, and there's even some speculation that last season he was planning to leave Iowa, but the injury happened, and that kind of impacted things and wasn't going to allow him to maybe go to as good of a program. And so not only this year was he playing, obviously, for Iowa to do well, but there is a rumor out there that, and I'm not saying I believe this rumor, I'm just giving you the idea that's out there, so that way you're informed, but there is a rumor out there that he was planning to leave Iowa before. He just did not think he had enough stock to go to a larger program that might set himself up on a better stage to improve his draft stock. In addition to wanting to improve his draft stock, that comes with playing more high profile games against better opponents. And so obviously his thought process there is I've been very well developed at Iowa, and from all these rumors and everything, there's no indication of him playing poorly on purpose or not being invested this season. So I don't want to turn Iowa fans against him, but that is kind of the rumor that's out there, and it makes sense. Iowa this season had a very good chance to get to the playoffs. Unfortunately, it didn't happen for them, but with him wanting to maybe play on a bigger stage, get to the playoffs, something like that, maybe improve his draft stock, that kind of seems to be what the motivational factors are here. In terms of where Entringer will go, Michigan State could be a possibility. Pat Fitzgerald was working with Iowa, and so there could have been a relationship connected there. Just playing Michigan could be a place. He has a family member that works at Michigan. He's from Ann Arbor, in the Ann Arbor area there at Michigan. So this could be a likely landing spot for him, either in Michigan, at Michigan, or maybe at Michigan State. I find it hard to believe he would go to Michigan State if he has a family member that works at Michigan, but just because you work the job there doesn't always mean you have to be a diehard fan of it. So who knows? We'll see what happens there. And then I also think that Ohio State is another team that probably needs to be mentioned here as well. It's not uncommon to see guys from Columbus go up to Ann Arbor. It's not uncommon to see guys from the state of Michigan, maybe the Ann Arbor area, come down to Ohio State as well. And if Entringer really does want to, have a chance at a national championship and play on the biggest stage, obviously Michigan is going to be there as well. But they're likely to be in the playoffs or I want to say likely. They have a very good shot at being in the playoffs. Ohio State is likely to be in the playoffs, and so that would work out there. So apparently the staff has been prepared for all different kinds of things. The Iowa staff was talking about the portal, saying, at this point, you got to expect these surprises. You got to be ready with your guys. And I do think that there's a few different names that Iowa might go after here. Obviously, if they find an FCS guy they really like, they might go that route. Ashlyn Barker from Florida State, he is from the state of Iowa. He might be somebody. He's in the transfer portal currently. Chris Bracey from Memphis might be another guy who's higher rated in the transfer. Well, not super highly rated, but he is garnering interest from other Power Four schools out there. So Iowa, they might go out there and get him. And then Tyler Brown, good season this year at James Madison. He might be another player that goes, that Iowa shows some interest in as well. All right, next one, Quincy Porter, Ohio State from Bergen Catholic out of New Jersey. Wide receiver, was a freshman this year. Only played in 4 games, only had 4 catches, but you look at that, he did have an injury for most of the season, and that is believed to have impacted things. And I've seen Quincy Porter. I haven't personally seen him, but I know people who have seen Quincy Porter on the sidelines of Ohio State games, and he does appear to actually have an injury. This was not an indication of, he wanted to portal all season long, and so he was quote unquote injured or anything like that. Very likely he was injured. And this is something that honestly, like we shouldn't be all that shocked by. I think Ohio State fans are pretty shocked by it because Quincy Porter was going to have an opportunity to play quite a bit next season. But when you really look at this Ohio State wide receiver room, your top 3 is pretty much set. Jeremiah Smith, Chris Henry Jr., and Brandon Inniss are going to be your top 3 guys. Regardless of what happened with Quincy Porter, Chris Henry Jr. is getting paid too much to not start for this team at Ohio State next season. And there's a thought process that Quincy Porter might have wanted some more money because he saw an elevated role for himself for something moving forward. I think the money stuff is kind of an excuse sometimes, so I don't always like to reference it, but it is a rumor out there, and so I figure I probably do need to bring that up. But I think the Chris Henry Jr. stuff here was probably the more determining factor. In terms of where he'll go, he took an unofficial visit to Penn State very late in the process, so you might see Penn State, but James Franklin's no longer there, so maybe he looks into Virginia Tech. They're also on the coast over there. Michigan could be a place, as he was also contemplating Michigan as well. Didn't sound like things went all that well with Michigan when he visited there, but who knows? We'll see. Miami, a team that could use a wide receiver. Maryland over there on that side. Oregon has always liked getting involved with Ohio State wide receivers, so maybe they came in and said, hey, we'll pay you some more money. Who knows? And then Oklahoma was another team that was deep into his recruitment that you might see going there. So in terms of Ohio State and what they do next, they're good. They got Chris Henry Jr. Obviously losing Porter stinks, but you got Hankton there and everything else. I think Ohio State's gonna be just fine continuing to recruit wide receivers, and they have some pretty good wide receiver depth in that room as well. That I think they're gonna be just fine. Obviously, if an injury happens this year or something, and Quincy Porter isn't there, that will be felt. But overall, I think Ohio State, even with Brian Hartline gone, very good wide receiver room. I think they're gonna be just fine. Third one, Jordan Young there at Michigan. Jordan Young from Monroe, North Carolina, safety, freshman this year, played in 10 games, had 15 tackles, 3 pass deflections, was the 26th graded safety on PFF. Oh, that might be incorrect. Hold on. No, it is not incorrect. 26th PFF grade of freshman safety in the Big Ten. So I thought I had the wrong number there because it was the same as the last safety. So maybe I did a copy and paste there incorrectly. But no. In terms of why did he exit, Sam Webb over there with 24/7, he's been posting that it sounds like it's because Michigan had to either choose to pay either Jordan Young or Andrew Marsh. I make sure you know that it's Sam Webb because I'm not always sure if I trust the sourcing on that, just because of Sam Webb and him not always being the most reliable insider there at Michigan. And in my opinion, I'm not saying it has to be anybody else's opinion, but in my opinion, not always the best reliable insider there. So we'll see. Jordan Young, you hear all the things about resources at Michigan. I don't personally think it was probably a resource issue. I probably think that maybe Kyle Whittingham just maybe saw other guys that he was going to have above Jordan Young, and maybe he just didn't want to pay Jordan Young as much as Jordan Young wanted to get paid, or maybe those in charge didn't see him as valuable as maybe he saw himself valued there. So if what Sam Webb is saying is true, that's great news for Michigan because it means Andrew Marsh is probably locked up. They probably made the decision to keep Andrew Marsh and utilize the money for him. So that's great. In terms of where Jordan Young will go, he's a former Clemson commit. He was very close to committing to NC State. In fact, he actually had a crystal ball for NC State. And then I could see Florida State as well. They're very active with some of these young players like this. Florida State kind of goes after this style of player, and he was recruited by them as well. I could see that possibly happening. And in terms of what Michigan can do, get Teo Johnson there. Teo Johnson, former safety from Utah. There's plenty of they should have plenty of other NIL to be able to go around. Pay another guy from the portal, but if I was there at Michigan, I'd be starting with Teo Johnson there, the transfer from Utah. And then finally, our shocking one, DeJuan Lane from Penn State out of Baltimore, Maryland safety. He was a sophomore this year, played in 12 games. He did start 2 games, but 29 tackles, 1 pass deflection, 1 sack, 31st PFF grade among safeties in the Big Ten. In terms of why did he enter, sounds like Lane, it was kind of being pushed out a little bit. Maybe not. They told him to leave, obviously, but it sounds like the Iowa State safeties are coming in. There may have been a conversation at some point, or maybe Lane just saw the writing on the wall of they have these Iowa State safeties coming in. They know who they want to go with. And so I could see Lane possibly going to Notre Dame. They were probably the closest ones in his recruitment coming out of high school. Notre Dame is going in the portal a little bit this year. We'll see what they kind of do. Michigan could be there as well. Maryland, they're out there, obviously in Maryland as well. they have a history of going after these Baltimore guys, and Mike Locksley wants to keep a guy like this home. He might go out there and do that. So in terms of what Penn State will do, I think they'll probably, just work with Marcus Neal and Jamison Patton. Patton's more of a slot, but, he does play safety, and so we'll see what happens there. So, all right, let's move on to the final. I didn't even do I had all these. I forgot to do them. If you listen to podcasts, I had graphics that I was supposed to bring up, and I forgot to bring them up. So I apologize, guys. Maybe I'll go through and add those later on. Probably the most shocking news of the day, in a day where there was just tons and tons and tons of shocking news. I mean, not like, shocking as in the sport is changing, but shocking as in guys that are going into the portal. The news on Tuesday night that hit was that DeMond Williams was going into the portal from Basha Chandler, Arizona, quarterback, obviously from Washington, played 2 years ago for them, was kind of being, groomed for that role there, started all season long this year, had over 3,000 passing yards, 25 passing touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 611 rushing yards. He was the 8th highest graded quarterback in the Big Ten on PFF. He was a little iffy this season and, on the road and in some pressure situations and stuff like that. But overall, DeMond Williams is a fantastic talent, and Washington was going to reap the rewards of having him play the past 2 years and really, him come in with a good recruiting class this next year on the defensive side of the ball. Good recruiting class in multiple ways, but definitely on the defensive side of the ball with some better linebackers and stuff like that. But overall, really, really sucks for Washington in this one that DeMond Williams does not look like he's going to be back. Now, there's a lot to this story, and we're going to try to get into all of it here. But if you listen to the 24/7 guys, in their kind of emergency podcast about this, they brought up that, in fact, DeMond Williams' agent is the same agent as Jedd Fisch. Now, what could we do with that information? That information can go a whole lot of different ways, and we could sit here with a whiteboard, the guy with the meme with like the type of guy. You could do that a lot in this situation with that information. But what we do know is that DeMond Williams entered into the transfer portal with a do not contact tag, which can indicate that somebody knows where they're going. Doesn't always indicate that. Some guys want to, some guys know they're going to be a hot enough commodity in the portal that they will not want other teams to contact them. They will want to be the one contacting other teams. Now, teams can still do that and stuff, but that's kind of their way of saying, like, I have an idea of where I want to go, or I was being tampered with and I know where I want to go. And if you followed, DeMond Williams or anything like that, on January 2nd, it came out that from Adam Schefter from Adam Schefter, who was the one that kind of broke this on Twitter and everything else. But Adam Schefter was the one that broke that he announced an extension with a new contract signed 4 days ago on January 2nd. So now, 4 days ago, Washington fans think they're great. Washington fans think DeMond Williams definitely coming back. And then 4 days later, the night of January 6th, he's announcing, I'm going into the transfer portal. Do not contact tag. This whole story is honestly pretty crazy. I have no idea what's going to happen next. Nobody really knows what's going to happen next. All we know is that Washington, apparently sourcing to Adam Schefter, he tweeted this out as well. He said, quote, Washington sources say they are prepared to pursue legal avenues to enforce DeMond Williams' signed contract. End quote. That's going to be very interesting to see how all this turns out. This is kind of like a Xavier Lucas situation 2.0. My biggest question is if Jedd Fisch and DeMond Williams had the same agent, did Jedd Fisch know this was happening? Or is there something going on with Jedd Fisch, with the NFL? Because we just had Black Monday. Is there something going on with Jedd Fisch and the NFL that DeMond Williams knew it's likely that Jedd Fisch isn't going to be back here, or Jedd Fisch is planning not to be back here, so I got to get myself out of here. And really, we can talk about but Washington can enforce the contract and they can get him back and everything else. Do they want to, though? It's the same thing with Wisconsin, but also a higher magnitude, because this is your quarterback. You really want to bring a guy back who it's clear he's not invested in this team. He doesn't want to play for them, and maybe you have stuff going on with your head coach as well. He's indicating he doesn't want to play for anybody but that head coach. It's pretty shady stuff, and I think at the end of the day, if you're a Washington fan, there's really no avenue for DeMond Williams to come back here. I hate to say that for Washington fans, because I think, obviously Washington fans deserve to reap the reward of the development of DeMond Williams these past couple of years, but I just don't see a situation where this happens. I think whoever it is that is going after DeMond Williams, most likely Lane Kiffin there at LSU, I'll explain that in a second, but whoever it is that's going after DeMond Williams here is probably just going to have to pay a little bit more of, whatever's in the contract, whatever else it might be, and they're going to get DeMond Williams to go on over to their school. And even if all of this happens after the transfer portal closes, guess what? Xavier Lucas still made it down to Miami, so DeMond Williams still might just make it on down to LSU. So if this is LSU here in this one, the Big Ten sounds like they would probably get involved with this. They got involved with the Xavier Lucas thing as well. And this could turn into a real big Big Ten versus SEC issue kind of fight. In my opinion, and, I get it if you're an Oregon fan, but I also think we need to look at this very logically and understand what this means ramification-wise for college football. Everybody should be supporting the Big Ten in Washington here. All of these media personalities that talk about how much they love college football, they're about to be tested, because if they come out not supporting the Big Ten and not supporting Washington here, then you can tell that all of that is hogwash. All of that is a lie, because they don't actually love college football, because this is destroying our sport right now. Not this situation in particular, but things like this that are going on. Players signing contracts, not honoring those, players leaving, at the drop of a hat because of whatever else it might be. This is the kind of stuff that ruins college football for a lot of people. The money, the transfer portal have already been big changes, but if you thought that you had a player locked up coming back, and not locked up, but locked in coming back, all that stuff, then this is the kind of stuff that's just going to frustrate people. Like I said earlier, it's one of the reasons why I'm not such a huge fan of college basketball now. Obviously, college basketball has not done this a whole lot, but still, the kind of transient nature of players and how often they move and everything else, it's I still like college basketball, don't get me wrong, but it is a little bit harder to get into when you have an all new starting five the next season. And if you have an all new starting quarterback every single season in college football, yeah, that's not great for the sport. One of the reasons why I referenced LSU as the possible landing spot here is because that DeMond Williams was committed to Ole Miss before he flipped to Arizona, and then obviously he went from Arizona to Washington with Jedd Fisch. And the coach who was at Ole Miss at the time was Lane Kiffin. And Lane Kiffin's kind of been striking out with quarterbacks here. They brought Sam Levin in for a visit, but he's not really committed, so we'll see what happens there. But it doesn't look like Trinidad Chambliss. I mean, Trinidad Chambliss might leave to go there, but that's not something I would, be super reliant on, because he also has to get the waiver and all that stuff as well. sounds like Damon Williams is probably going on off to LSU in this one. But I said I don't think Demond Williams came back. So what's the other thing that Washington can do here? It's not a great situation, but one thing I think they possibly could do is Washington could go after Noah Fafita. Noah Fafita is going to be a redshirt senior this year at Arizona. Could they, get him to go into the transfer portal? Obviously, that didn't happen before, but there are rumors that Fafita was on campus earlier this week. Does that mean that Jedd Fisch knew this was coming and he was preparing for it? I don't know. Like I said, just rumors at this point. We'll see if anything happens. I would say that, it would not be completely out of the question to see Noah Fafita in the next day or two maybe enter into the transfer portal and do something like that. But then again, he also stayed there when Jedd Fisch left before, so he might just be really loyal and not willing to do that. We'll see what happens. There's going to be quarterbacks in the transfer portal. Heck, go get Aiden Childs, Okay, sorry, Washington fans. I know you might not love that. But we'll see what happens with all of this. This is a pretty crazy situation. We'll keep you updated here on the Big Ten Huddle. We're going to take a break really fast, and then we'll come back. We'll talk about Paul Finebaum and everything going on with him. See ya here in just a minute. Paul Finebaum, you are just the gift that keeps on giving, because Paul Finebaum, I know not everybody says that, but Paul Finebaum has now given us the gift of announcing the Big Ten is better than the SEC because he can't defend the SEC anymore. Love it, Paul. Thank you so much for giving us this gift. We have a recording of Paul here. I don't know if I'm allowed to play this on here. I would think I am because of like the Free Use Act and stuff like that. But Reddit posted the video of Paul Finebaum talking about this. So I'm just going to go ahead and play it, and we'll see what happens copyright-wise. Who knows?
Paul, I'll go to you. Is the SEC dominance over as we know it?
I mean, I'm under contract to disagree with you, but I don't really care about the contract. Yes. I mean, I have been on.
Okay, I know he's joking, but the contract thing is definitely something that makes this even funnier. All right, let's continue.
I'm at Hill, Stephen A. And I am getting destroyed. There's no way to defend the SEC. It's been terrible. Now, I'm sure somebody at the SEC office is whispering, "Hey, don't forget, Ole Miss could win it all," and that would solve some of the wounds. But this has been a long year for the SEC, and I think in the end, because I kept wrapping my arms around Alabama and saying, "Stephen A., did you remember what they did? They went through that gauntlet in the middle of the year." Well. Right. A lot of those teams they beat really weren't very good after all. They lost in bowl games and they looked terrible. Right. So it's a rough year for the SEC. Ole Miss is it, regardless of the Lane Kiffin story, which I know we're going to talk about. But there's no if Ole Miss loses Thursday night, and I'm sitting around having to defend this league to you, Stephen A., saying, "Oh, no big deal that it's 3 straight years without an SEC team in the national championship game." I mean, there's no defense. Well, it's been rough.
Paul, I'll go to you.
Well, good on you, Paul Finebaum, for admitting it. What everybody else has figured out. I guess not everybody else, because there's some SEC people that haven't figured it out. But I have 3 reasons why I think Paul Finebaum is right here. And obviously, you know that I think Paul Finebaum is right here. I've been very vocal about how I feel like the Big Ten has been better than the SEC last year, but the gap has certainly increased this year. And I'm going to share those with you. And I got some stats to bring up here. Now, I do not have a fancy graphic for you on this one. All right. I had to dig so deep into this Demond Williams stuff. I did not have a lot of time to put together a graphic. So here's my note sheet. We'll just work off this. I'll zoom in here a little bit so you guys can see it a little bit better. All right, so 3 reasons why I think Paul is right. I believe the tides have changed and the Big Ten is dominating in the postseason. Now, you look at the CFP record by conference in the 4-team era. This was when the SEC was their most dominant of the last few years. They won 6 national championships in this time frame from 2014 to 2023. 19-9 in that era absolutely absurd how many games the SEC was winning, and there was no debate during this time frame that the SEC was better. It was just the Big Ten punching up, and in fact, the ACC at 7-6. Now, a lot of that, Clemson winning games and stuff, but still, the ACC, you have to give them credit, 7-6. The Big Ten, 6-7. You had some good efforts by Ohio State. You had, Michigan State get in there as well, but they lost and working through that stuff. But overall, not great for the Big Ten. And then the Pac-12, 2-3, Big 12, 1-6. If you're listening on podcasts, I have them written down here. If you want to come look, you can open up the YouTube video and go there. All right, the CFP record by conference in the 12-team era. Now, this is only in the playoffs. This is not bowl games or anything. We'll get to bowl games this year and here in just a minute. But in the 12-team era, the Big Ten is 9-4. Independent, Notre Dame, they're 3-1. That was all playoffs last year. But still, the independent, we'll give them their credit. The SEC, 5-5, and the ACC, 2-2. Nobody else has a win in the college football playoffs in the 12-team era. American, Mountain West, Sun Belt, and Big 12, all no wins. The Big 12 is actually 0-2. With Arizona State last year losing to Texas, and then Texas Tech losing this year to Oregon as well. And then finally, the recent bowl season, the most recent bowl season, the Big Ten 9-4, the ACC actually 8-4, the Big 12 5-5, and the SEC 4-9. It's not like the SEC is 8-4 here or something like that. 4-9. And I know everybody will say, oh, they got their players out, they got this. Well, which is it? Okay, is it that only certain games matter, or is it that it just means more? Because that's the whole phrasing of the SEC. It just means more. It just means more playing in the SEC. Well, apparently it doesn't, because there's players that are opting out of these games. There are players for Big Ten teams that continue to play in these games. Look at Dennis Sutton. Look at Luke Altmaier at Illinois. There are players that continue to play in these games. If you're a first-round pick type of guy, like a for sure first-round pick type of guy, I get it. But if you're a fringe first round pick, if you're a day 3, a day 2 type of guy, you should be playing in this game, if nothing else, because the other team's probably going to have some backups in there, and it's going to make you look really good. Look at Dennis Sutton. He looks really good going up against Clemson's, essentially backup offensive line. Looked really good for him. The offensive line for Penn State looked really good when all of the first rounders for Clemson weren't playing in that game, right? Like, this is kind of how this stuff works. But overall, you can use the excuse all you want of this, that, and the other, but the Big Ten has won those games, and if you really, really care about your school, you really care about your conference, you need to actually have your players play in those games and not just reside to the fact of like, oh, well, they're not actually going to play. And, like Missouri, if they really wanted to win that game against Virginia, they probably should have had Bo Pribula play in that game. They probably shouldn't have changed the quarterback or whatever they did to Matt Zoller in that one. So, all right, next one, and I've been saying this one for a while, guys. I mean, if you've been following the Big Ten Huddle, you know that whenever the SEC talks about, oh, we just compete, it's just, oh, who knows who's going to actually win. It's just a glorified Big 12 right now at this point. I'm not saying that the SEC is the Big 12. I still think the SEC is better than the Big 12. However, I don't think it's by all that much. Right now in history, obviously they're better than the Big 12, but I don't think it's as much as some people think it is. I think right now they're just a glorified Big 12, and the SEC has been a top-heavy league, and right now they have no top-heavy teams. Georgia has not won a playoff game since they won their national championship. Alabama did not make the playoffs last year. This year, they beat an Oklahoma team that honestly didn't deserve to be in the playoffs. They deserved it because of their record and stuff, but I guess I should say they deserved it. They got in the playoffs because they beat an Alabama team that honestly shouldn't have even been in the playoffs themselves either. And we saw that against Indiana. And I'm not in the business of saying like, oh, well, you lost, so you shouldn't have been in the playoffs. But when you look back on it, they should have never jumped Notre Dame, and Notre Dame should have never been kicked out of the playoffs altogether. Miami should have still been in, but when you have every other conference champion moving down except Alabama, yeah, red lights are going to go off, and we can say if that happens to a Big Ten team, I'll say it, but that's not happened to a Big Ten team. it is objectively true that Alabama did not deserve to be in the playoffs, and there was some fishy business going on to get them in there. The inexcusable move up over Notre Dame, everything else. They do not have top heavy teams in the conference right now. What has happened? A lot of people have said, "Oh, there's more parity in college football. The SEC has just gotten that much better." No. What we have seen is that the SEC, their top contenders have gotten worse, and their middle of the pack has stayed the same. And they've had a couple teams like Vanderbilt, like South Carolina last year, move up and get better. Vanderbilt got way, way better with Diego Pavia, but they got way, way better in the SEC. They did not get better than some other teams out there. It's still Vanderbilt. You watch them against Iowa. Iowa put up 30 plus points. Iowa put up more points on them than Alabama did. Right? This is not a situation where Vanderbilt immediately just came into the stratosphere of being able to compete with top level contenders in college football. They are still Vanderbilt. They are still a team. Yes, they won 10 games this season. Congratulations. You beat a bad, South Carolina team and all these other teams, and really the only teams that you played that were a test, you lost to. So congratulations there. But as far as I'm concerned, the SEC, their contenders have come down to the level of the middle of the pack, and some of their bottom tier teams have come up to the level of the middle of the pack. Obviously, Alabama, Georgia, still really high up there. They were in the SEC championship game, but overall together, it's just not. It's not been that. The conference that can put a bunch of national champions out there. Ole Miss is a really nice story, but I just don't think Ole Miss is going to be able to win the national championship. Come back to this video and prove me wrong if they do, but I just don't think they are. And then the other thing is that you look at the number of different teams in the playoffs. And this is another thing that I want to talk about when people accuse the Big Ten of being top heavy. Oh, well, the Big Ten is just top heavy, so they can't be the best conference out there. Look at the numbers here. Number of different teams who have made the playoffs. The Big Ten has 7, the SEC has 7, the ACC 4, and the Big 12 3. The majority of those teams for the Big Ten have come in the last few years, right? The majority of those teams, well, Washington made it very early on, Michigan State made it early on, but you're talking about Oregon, Indiana, you're talking about, obviously, Ohio State making it in there as well, and Ohio State's been in, but a team like Indiana to be able to come in, rise themselves up in the conference and get to that point, it adds more to saying that this isn't just a top-heavy conference. Obviously, the conference has national championship caliber teams, but that's what happens. When you have national championship, not everybody in your conference can be a national championship caliber team. It's just how it goes. And then you look at the number of teams in each conference that has made the Final Four. The Big Ten leads with 7. Every single team in the college football playoffs for the Big Ten has made the playoffs, has made the Final Four. Now, some of those are a little skewed because you have Michigan State obviously making the Final Four when they made it in. Washington obviously made the Final Four right away when they made it in. But still, that's a top 4 seed to be able to make it into the playoffs. Point number 3, and this will be my last point, you look at the record against the spread. Going back to 2014, back to 2020, the SEC had a 50.5% wins against the spread. The Big Ten, 49.2%. All right, the difference there is a little bit over 1% between those two in favor of the SEC. Okay, makes sense. The SEC, they're playing well. Public perception. A lot of the against the spread stuff, the spread is public perception. So that's why this matters. This isn't your typical win-loss stuff and everything. This is, are you able to cover against the teams? Are you able to play up to the standard of what the public has you at, or the betting markets, the metrics have you at? Are you playing up to that? The Big Ten was very close in 2014 to 2020, but not great. And then the SEC was over that. Congratulations to them. In 2021 to 2024, both teams were over that. The Big Ten, 51.1%, the SEC, 51.7%, a difference of 0.6% in favor of the SEC. You see the gap was closing in 2021 to 2024. That's great. And then now in 2025, when you look at all of this together, the SEC is well below 50% at 47.8%. I believe the only conference that is worse than them, or Power 4 conference that is worse than them, is the ACC. The Big 12 is actually, last time I checked, checked. I didn't check the past couple weeks. I checked this a few weeks ago, and I did not run the numbers for the Big 12. I apologize. But a couple weeks ago, they were well above 50%. The Big 10 was above by a couple, and then obviously they've not covered. They did not cover against, Miami, and then you had USC and some other stuff like that. But anyway, the Big Ten barely under 50%. So yes, you do have to take into account the Big Ten is under 50% here, but not nearly as much as the SEC is. The SEC 47.8% against the spread. The Big Ten 49.6%. That is the largest difference of these time frames of plus 1.8%. So you've seen the dominance of the SEC, how much that worked together in public perception. Are you achieving what people think you should achieve? The middle range of it all, with the 21 to 24, that's when you really start to see the Big Ten starting to close the gap a little bit more. And then in 2025, when the gap fully closes and the Big Ten can finally say they are the best team the best conference in college football. Will it always remain that way? We'll see, but at least for now, it is that way. And Paul Finebaum, you are correct. Congratulations. All right, that is going to do it for us here at the Big Ten Huddle. Appreciate you being here with me. Going to cut these up and put these on YouTube. So if you ever want to just watch a single segment or something like that, you can always find those over there. And then you can always watch the entire episode there as well. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, 5-star rating, review. Really helps us out if you do that. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.